In the next... What? Huh? I love you. I love you. Hey, what do you think? What strings do you like to use? Splendid, do you like strings? Do you like strings? Hello, Chuck here, baby-faced Chuck, and welcome to another segment where I answer questions asked by friendly people on the internet. Just a quick reminder, if you have a question that you'd like to have discussed on this segment, please do let me know in the comments or through my website or wherever. I love when people ask really interesting questions for me to think about and give answers to, and if I can help you out, I'd love to do that. So do let me know. In the segment following this one, we've got some more really cool questions asked by David G. and Alan Gray that I can't wait to get to. So don't worry guys, I haven't forgot about you. But in this segment, all of the questions will be brought to you by Artem. Artem is one of my online buddies who is always checking out the content on this channel, and he's asked some really cool questions about how to choose a guitar. How do you know what guitar is right for you? Is it important to set it up so that it feels playable? What does that even mean? What kind of strings do you use, and things like that. So I'm going to cover that whole topic in this segment. Choosing a guitar, setting it up, choosing the strings, and making sure it feels right for you. So, how to choose a good guitar? Well, this is difficult to answer, but I'll give some general info and then maybe a little bit of personal preference, I guess. So I'm going to stick to fingerstyle guitar because that's what I play. So no electric guitar will be considered, in what I'm about to say. The first thing that you want to decide is, do you want a steel string guitar or a nylon string? Steel strings are referred to as acoustic guitars. Nylon strings are referred to as classical or maybe flamenco. Sometimes they are one and the same. The main thing that will factor in your decision on which one to choose is probably just the tone of voice. So you can listen to steel string players, you can listen to classical players or flamenco players, and just see what kind of tone resonates with you. They both have their strengths, but they're very different guitars. Obviously the strings are different, but the whole construction of the guitar is different. They're going to feel very differently when you play them. Acoustics, steel strings, are built more for like really quick and loud, powerful attack, chord strumming, pingy tones, things like that. Classicals or nylon strings are built more for sustain and I guess maybe the quality of tone you get during that sustain. Although you can play, I would say you can probably play most types of music on either. If you ask me, I'm a classical guitarist, so choosing a nylon string for me is the superior choice because of the types of sounds that you can coax out of these guitars, the wonderful tone of voice, and for what I play, it's what I need. I don't do a lot of chord strumming. I do, lyrical type playing or playing different voices, things like that. But that may be the case for you, it may not be. But do a lot of listening if you're not sure. You want to say, do I want a steel string or do I want a nylon string? After that, okay, you're gonna buy a guitar. Here's my advice for what kind of guitar to get. One of two options. Either get a really cheap one or a really expensive one. Because there's just not enough for the mid-grade guitars to make up for, the amount of money it's going to cost you. Okay, here's what I mean by that. If you're going to go the classical guitar route, I can only recommend a handmade classical guitar. This means it's not made by some giant company. It's made by one person. One person has had their hands all over this guitar and has been involved in 100% of its construction from the time when it was just slats of wood. Those are the best kind of guitars. So, and I don't mean just like, oh, they're pretty or oh, they sound really good. You can get more out of those instruments as a player and an artist. Are they expensive? Well, sure. I mean, not compared to like a violin, but a really good handmade concert classical guitar will probably cost you at least $5,000 in American dollars, okay? And maybe like the $5,000 to $8,000 range. So yeah, that's a lot of money. But is it worth it? Without a doubt, it's worth it. I think you'll find things on these instruments that you just won't find on an instrument that's not as good. So that's what I recommend. I recommend that to all my students. However, most people just don't have that kind of money they can drop. Okay, so, and even if you can't drop that kind of money, work towards it, save towards it. If you're going to play guitar, even on a halfway serious level, getting a good instrument is, there's just no substitute for that. So save for a really nice handmade classical guitar. You might want to go to like a guitar festival, and you can meet a lot of makers. Makers go to guitar festivals. Of course, you can look people up online. I'm going to make a video coming up on my handmade guitars. I only have handmade guitars except for one that was given to me from a company. But I wouldn't spend money on a guitar that wasn't handmade. It's just not worth it to me. Even if it's a few $100, I'd rather spend it on something else or save it for something else. So if you can't drop that kind of cash, then I would say spend like $200 to $300. That will get you an instrument that's good enough probably to do whatever you need it to do if you're starting out. Or maybe even if you've been playing for a little while. Can't really throw brand names at you, I'm sorry, but you can look into it yourself, okay? Look for a nylon string guitar, $300. Steel string guitar, $200, $300, whatever. You don't need to spend more than that. The first classical guitar I ever got, it was a very popular Spanish-based company. I spent $300 on it. And I played it until my teacher was like, okay, you got to get a real guitar. But it was a good guitar. And I ended up selling it to a student, just saying, yeah, this is a step up from what you have. And you can use this guitar. You can learn a lot from it. I would just get a cheap one and then work towards saving for a very nice instrument. Okay, here's some things that you don't want your classical guitar to have, or your nylon string guitar to have. Steel strings I don't know about as much. But if you're going to get a classical guitar, okay, get like an actual classical. Don't get like one of these hybrid acoustic / classicals, whatever. I mean, these companies are trying to sell guitars. They're really good at it. They make you think you're getting the best of both worlds. The truth is you're not getting, the truth is you're getting less from both worlds. You're getting less from whatever world you want to commit to. So don't get a classical with an acoustic neck or whatever. Don't get one with electronics in it. Okay? A lot of people are like, oh, my guitar has a tuner in it and, I can plug it into an amp. Cool. It also makes it sound really bad. I can't explain it. Maybe it's something to do with just that, those things are kind of heavy, and maybe where it is on the guitar, it just throws things off. But don't get one of those. If you need to play live, just mic yourself. I mean, that's going to be the better sound anyway. I've never seen a fingerstyle guitar with electronics in it that I thought was worth it. I did see a concert where someone played on an nylon string guitar that had one of these things, and it had a jack on this end, and they plugged in and played, and it just sounded awful. I mean, they were a really good player, but I just ruined the whole concert. I mean, the sound was just terrible. So I haven't seen anything yet that can duplicate the natural sound through something like that. Again, what I do when I have gigs is I mic myself externally, which, you're already going to be bringing an amp, you're already going to be bringing cords. Bring a mic stand and a mic is not that big a deal. One of my good buddies always tells me, you got to get a cheap guitar and you got to put some electronics in it, and I always say thanks, but no, I don't want to do that. I hate that sound. I've got a setup that I like. So I would recommend don't get one of those. And if you want to play live, do it that way. Some other things, some kind of just quick checks for the guitar. You need to check and make sure that it stays in tune. I have seen some very cheap guitars where the tuning pegs start to turn on their own. Or maybe it's a ghost that does it, I don't know. It has a ghost with the guitar, but the tuning pegs start to turn on their own, like they can't handle the tension that's put on them by the strings. Okay, obviously you don't want an instrument like that at all, because it's not going to stay in tune. Play the instrument. Make sure it doesn't feel too difficult to play. Play some chords on it. Play some bar chords on it. Of course, you can set it up better later, which I'll talk about, but if the strings are this high off of the fretboard, it's not a great sign. Also, I mean, most people, statistically, when they choose a guitar, they're really worried about how it looks. That is just the least important thing. Especially if you're getting a classical guitar, it's going to look a certain way, which is plain to a lot of people. No inlays on the fingerboard, no F-holes like other classical instruments, or no, designs on the front, right? That has its own very special beauty to it, although a lot of people they can't see it that way, or at least not yet. So I wouldn't pick up the one right next to it that has a skull design on it. You have a plain looking guitar hanging on the wall. It's $200. It might be exactly what you need. You've got one next to it that's $275 with a skull picture or a diamond logo or something that, I just think is stupid. And that's $275. Man, it looks cool, Get the plain one. It's going to be a better instrument, I promise you. What they've spent on the design, they've compensated for in construction 9 times out of 10. Okay, so is it important to have a guitar that's set up well for playing and studying? Absolutely yes. 100% yes. We're all going to have technical difficulties to work on, to overcome, to improve. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between, this just needs more work and more, relaxation or more flexibility. And also, this is too hard on this guitar. It shouldn't be this hard. You always want to work towards easy things, natural things, things that don't feel like they require much effort, if any. One of the best ways you can help yourself in this area is have your guitar set up just the way that you like it. Okay, if you're just starting out, you don't know what this is yet. You'll figure it out, but you don't have any reference yet. The main thing to look for is your action. Action on stringed instruments, on any stringed instrument, not just guitar, means how much space is between the edge of your fret and the string. So like, I don't have a guitar on my lap, half of my cat, but like, this is not very much action. Okay, this is a lot of action, right? And people use different action for different reasons. There's pros and there's cons. I'm gonna talk about some of them. But you need to find the action that you think feels just right. The action that I use is pretty much the same across all my guitars. It's a measurement. The action at the first string is 2.5 millimeters of space. And there's a consistent slope or incline, I guess, if you will. At the 6th string, it's 3.5 millimeters because that's a bigger string. And I have all my guitars set up that way. Sometimes I think there's a slight adjustment for this or that, but basically that's the sweet spot for me. That means it feels easy to fret a note. It feels easy to do a bar chord. I don't feel like I have to push down very hard, but I don't sacrifice the sound at all. I mean, you might think oh, if it's easier to push down if your action is lower, then just make it really low. Well, at some point it starts to affect your sound, where you just don't get as responsive a sound. The higher the action is, maybe the better the sound is. I don't really know, but that seems to be true. The louder it is, the more responsive it is. Okay, but the trade-off is if it's too hard to fret, you're not going to be getting these good sounds anyway. You're going to be getting buzzes and missed notes and frustration, right? You might have some discomfort, whereas you could have just avoided it if you set your action up properly. So the measurements I use, I think they're traditional as far as I know. They're not unique measurements. 2.5 millimeters at the first string, 3.5 millimeters at the 6th string. Lower action means you don't have to press down as hard with your fretboard hand. It also means you can't pluck as hard with your plucking hand. If you're doing a heavy rest stroke, okay, those are gonna start to bite you pretty fast. You start to get this smacky sound, the sound of the string smacking into the fret wire, because the action is too low. The action that's higher, okay, we've already mentioned, you get a bigger sound. You have much more leeway here. You can push as much as you want, maybe, but it's harder on this hand. So if you're really strong in this hand, maybe you might like a higher action. Maybe you can handle it if you have really big hands, really meaty fingers. Maybe it's not a big deal. If you need some help in this hand, lower the action. And you might just kind of have to try some things. This is adjusted on classical guitars by the saddle on this end and the nut on this end. The nut's where your strings cross here, and the saddle is where they cross on this side. Because classical guitars don't have a truss rod in them, so that's how you adjust it, assuming your neck is straight, is not bent. I know most steel strings, they have a truss rod in them, so that might be how they adjust the action, although you might even still want to get new pieces cut. To get your action adjusted, you'll need to take it to someone who knows how to work on guitars. You could go to a chain music store or a local music store. Probably someone there will know. If you give them the measurements, they could probably do it. If you're serious into playing and you really want to get to know your guitars and set them up right, I would find someone that you know that either builds or works on guitars for a living. If you live in the Dallas, Texas area by chance, go to Gabriel's Guitar Repair. I'll put his link in the information. I take all my stuff to him. And man, that guy knows what he's doing. Oh my God. And just I've had multiple guitar crises where I call him and I'm just like, Gabe, this is happening. I need help. And he's just like, bring it over, bring it over. And he sets me straight. He fixes it every single time. And now he knows how I like guitars, so he's just like, okay, let me set it up for you. I know what you like. So go to him if you live anywhere near DFW, or even if you live in Texas somewhere else. Man, it might be worth the drive, unless you have someone in your area. So find someone who really knows what they're doing, like Gabe. But if not, you can take it to just a music shop, someone that works on guitars. They should be able to help you out. Okay, so that's action, playability, kind of segueing into strings. What strings do I use or recommend? This actually goes right hand in hand with playability. So in classical guitar strings, they don't come in gauges like electric guitar strings or acoustic guitar strings. And this used to drive me crazy, because it's like, with those other kinds of guitars, you can just look on the package and be like, oh, this is a 50 gauge low E string to a 10 gauge high E string. You know exactly what you're getting. Most classical guitar strings, nylon string companies, they don't put the gauge numbers on the packet. They put things like medium tension, normal tension, hard tension, light tension, heavy tension, medium high tension. Okay, and it used to drive me nuts. But because these guitars are so sensitive, I think it actually makes sense that you really need to experience each set, because they're very different. I mean, they will make your guitar respond very differently. If you put a medium set by a company and then you put a medium high set by the same company, different strings all the way around. Like, your guitar will respond differently to these strings. Medium tension or normal tension strings, they're going to give you a little bit lower action. They're going to contribute to a lower action. High tension or hard tension are going to contribute to a little bit of a higher action. And again, that factors into leeway. Okay, you can push a little harder with high tension strings. You can be a little more careful with medium tension strings or light tension strings. In terms of playability, you're just going to have to weigh the pros and cons of, high tension will be a little harder to press down here, but you'll have more freedom here. But that's not what makes my decision when choosing a string. Okay, there's only one thing that makes me choose a brand of string or a tension of string, whatever. There's only one thing, and it's actually not playability. It's whatever the guitar sounds best with. If you get a handmade sensitive guitar, it will sound better with either high tension strings or low tension strings or medium tension strings or whatever. There will be a set of strings that will make it sound the best, without a doubt. It changes from guitar to guitar. Some guitars I run high tension on, other guitars I run medium tension on. For instance, one of my guitars that likes medium tension strings, if I put high tension strings on it, it just sounds so stressed. And a lot of the body and a lot of the voice in the guitar just doesn't get to come out, because it just sounds like it's being choked. A little louder, yeah, but is that worth the sacrifice in tone quality? No. I mean, you don't want to sing and sound like you're choked. You sound like you're sick. And I've had instances where I put high tensions on a guitar, play on it for 5 minutes, and I immediately take them off because I'm just like, man, without a doubt, this guitar sounds way worse. And it's not a good set of strings for it. That approach seems to take care of the playability. I had a guitar, one of my main guitars, my best guitar. It had kind of low action at the time. So I was running extra hard tension strings on it. And it sounded really good with that setup. Extra hard means it's going to contribute to a really high action, but it was already set pretty low. And it was a really, really good mix. It did not feel too difficult here at all, and it gave me plenty of punch here. Eventually, I had the guitar I think I had it refretted actually. So I had the action adjusted after the new frets were put in, because they were a different size. And since then, I don't use the extra hard anymore because those variables have changed, and I went back to hard, and now it feels about the same, but I think it sounds even a little better in the plucking hand. The notes are a little bit fuller, but you're just going to need to experiment with tensions to see which one sounds better. High tension strings will sound louder probably. So sometimes you put high tension strings on a guitar and you're like, man, power, boost, this sounds great. Other times you put them on and it's like, you're just sacrificing the tone quality. In that case, go to medium. The other thing about choosing strings is you can buy strings, of course, as a 6-string set. And you probably know that the 3 treble strings are different than the 3 bass strings, right? The treble strings are just nylon or steel if you're doing steel string, right? The bass strings are nylon cores with steel winding or some kind of metal, I don't know. Same thing with steel strings, okay? They're wound. I've never found a set where I say, okay, all 6 strings of this one company's set are best for this guitar. Never. Not even close. In fact, I just forgot to even think of it that way. Because you can also buy like a treble set, only these 3, or you can buy a bass set, these 3. So I usually just buy those. I'll buy a whole set if I know I'm going to use half of it for something, and then I have the other half if I want to try out or whatever. But it's always half and half, mix and match. It just works out that way. If I happen to find a 6-string set that I thought all sounded great, I would use that. It just hasn't worked out that way. So keep that in mind too. I mean, initially, you might, if you're trying out strings, it's no big deal to put on all 6 strings on a new set. But just keep in mind, if you say, oh, the basses for this new set sound better, but the trebles, I don't really like them, they don't sound as good, then throw the other trebles back on, or try different trebles, and then okay, these basses are this company, I like these. The trebles, I'm still trying to find, and of course, you can imagine that can keep going for 1 string at a time, which I'm not really there yet, but my guitar teacher is. He'll be like, oh, this first string is Augustine, the second one is Oasis, the third one is Oasis, the fourth one is D'Addario, this one is and he's like, oh yeah, this is the perfect set for this guitar. And it's like 5 different companies makes the perfect set. But I believe him. And he also says, sometimes you change that 1 string to the perfect match and it makes all 6 just sound amazing. So I believe him when he says that. I think that's something we shouldn't forget about. When it comes to brands for strings, I'll just give you some common ones, good brands, but you'll just have to see if they match your guitar. I would definitely try out D'Addario. D'Addario bass strings I always use on at least a couple of my guitars. I think they're the best bass strings, and they're really cheap. Some strings are cheap, some are more expensive, and I don't buy expensive strings. I just can't do it. It's just something that I can't spend money on. Even if I like them, it's like, well, I'm never going to be able to buy these things that they're $20 a pack. So D'Addario strings are a very good price. And their basses, I think they work on all of my guitars really well. If it's medium tension or high tension, that's a different thing. But their basses are durable; they last a while, a good while. And some guitars I'll make a different choice, but D'Addario basses I really like in general. The D'Addario trebles, I think you should try. I don't like them, but I have tried them, especially on a new guitar. Especially on a new handmade guitar. I would try them because they sound so awfully plain, just like vanilla. There's just nothing going on with these treble strings. And I've got a buddy who's a guitar builder. He actually makes D'Addario strings sound like really good with his guitars. But that's an exception. Usually they just lack some kind of just anything. I don't know. It's not that they sound bad, but if you compare them, you're like, oh wow, this string sounds deeper and brighter all at once. And D'Addario just sounds like, eh. But I think it's important for your gauges to know what this very plain sound sounds like on your new instrument. It helps you realize, okay, do I need a brighter string? Do I need a heavier string or a lighter string? Do I need a darker string? Maybe one of these D'Addario strings will work just right, and then I'll swap out the other two. Almost all the makers that I've ever heard of building guitars, they build with D'Addario strings initially because they just need that blank canvas of sound for them to work with. I mean, they want to know that if there's an effect to the sound, they know every bit why, every bit of the construction, and none of it is coming from the strings, which I think is a great idea. So usually if you get a new guitar from a builder, chances are high it's going to have D'Addario strings on it. You want to know if they're hard tension or medium tension or medium high, you never know. And not all builders use D'Addario, but if they have sponsors, then they don't. But the plainness of D'Addario is kind of interesting. Try them out. I always end up switching from the trebles because I don't think they sound as interesting, but I would try them. Another company I like is Labella. I really like their trebles for a lot of guitars. Again, either medium tension, high tension. Labella has a medium high set, just to confuse you further. So those are all options for you to try. The Labella strings, in comparison to D'Addario, let's say, they sound brighter, like in a pleasant way, not in an annoying way, and they also sound deeper to me. It's like a clearer attack and more depth all at once. And I've done direct comparisons. Same guitar, same recording scenario, same piece. One has Labella trebles, one has D'Addario trebles, and that's what I found. That the Labella treble I really liked. I would still start with D'Addario because you don't know what you'll be gaining if you don't do that. But do that comparison yourself and see what you think. Labella basses, to me, they're pretty interesting. I have one guitar. It's a very light guitar. It's very bright and clear, and I think Labella basses sound really good on it, but they make it sound really different. I like that sound, but for me it's a weird kind of combination. Generally, Labella basses, to me, they just aren't as rich as like D'Addario. They're brighter and the attack is really strong. I think they're worth trying out though, especially if you need help with a fifth string or something. It needs to be a little bit brighter, and you can get a Labella bass string. I think they're good to try, but in the end I usually end up going away from them. Something weird with strings and trying them is I used to kind of try and balance I guess the colors, if you will. Like I thought, if you have a bright sounding guitar, then I want to use a darker sounding string so I can get this happy medium. Or if it's a dark warm sounding guitar, then I'm going to use a brighter string. And what I've kind of found personally is that usually, like the brighter guitars, they work really well with a bright sounding string. I thought it would be like too much brightness, like too harsh or too loud or too something, but they work really well. The fuller sounding guitars, they work better with a richer string that's not quite as bright and attacky, for the most part. That was something that I thought, might end up being the other way around. Another company that I think makes really good treble strings is Savarez. Savarez makes this brand of treble strings. Well, it's all 6 strings, but this brand of strings called Cristal. It's like Cristal. And they have Savarez strings run on the light side in terms of tension. So if you get like a medium tension Savarez, they're going to compare to like a light tension of another brand. And high tension is going to be like medium-ish or medium-high. So they have a red pack of the Cristal strings. And those are like pretty light, but they're very bright strings. A lot of attack on them, and they're really interesting. They're worth a try. They also have a yellow pack that I think they call Tension Forte, high tension. And those are like medium-ish, medium-high, kind of comparatively. And those are really good strings. I like those. I have one guitar where that's what I use. Just it's been on there for, I think it's been over a year. And they're bright. It's a good balance in tension. It's high enough, but it doesn't feel very high. Those are a really good string. I would recommend trying out. Savarez basses for me are like they're like a novelty. The medium tension bass strings, I think they're called Quorum. They're super spanky because they're just so light, but they're really punchy. So I'll put them on from time to time. I'll get a set and just kind of laugh, you know. I'll play something and just something bass heavy and just kind of have fun. But they're not really serious to me. However, if you had a guitar that really liked light tension strings, even on the bass side, the Quorums might be a good bet. Savarez Quorum medium tension. For really cheap strings, there's this company called Galley, and their trebles I don't want anything to do with. Their basses are pretty good, and the thing about those strings is they last a very long time. Most people kind of, after playing the basses for a while, you start to get some buildup on them, and it turns them a darker color, and the basses go dead. At this point, you want to change them. This is like very important, and I've had in-depth discussions with students who just still don't believe me. But the basses sound worse the longer you play them. I mean, eventually they go dead, and you do lose some qualities. You lose a lot of sound choices. So play your basses until they go dead and then change them so they're new. Don't get used to that sound of dead basses. The exception to that would be if that's just your favorite sound in the world. However, you're losing some sound choices for sure, and you're losing a lot of responsiveness with dead basses. Trebles don't go dead, so I don't ever change my trebles. They just keep sounding better and better. I have talked to a few people who get scratchy trebles. I have no idea why that happens. This never happened to me in my life. And with talking with guitarists, some people are like, "Oh yeah, I get scratchy trebles." Other people are like, "What? What happens? That's never happened to me." So I'm in the latter category. I don't know why. I just count myself fortunate because once I find a good treble set, I leave it on just forever until I'm ready to try something else, or I just want to try something else for fun. When I find a set that I know works good, I just want to feed that to the guitar. But if that happens to you, then you can just change your strings out, or you can like move them down, right? You can unwind it, move it down some, and retie it, and then wind it back up. You can even take strings off and like save them and then put them back on too, just in case you didn't know. Especially trebles. Basses, it's like if they're dead, they're not going to come back. Trebles you can save and then put them back on another guitar. That's what I do. So I'll just have these packs, these Ziploc bags and I write what string they are. Okay, these are Oasis Titanium Hard. So if I ever want these strings, I have a set, I don't have to buy them. Some other popular brands, I guess, that you might want to try. There's a company called Royal Classic. I don't know if it's Classic or Class 6, plural, but RC is their logo. Royal Classic. They make good strings. They're a little bit more expensive. They're about the most expensive strings that I will buy. But I will buy their treble strings, or I'll buy a full set. But because if I know I like the treble strings, and then you keep them on your guitar for a year, and I feel like it's worth the $16 or the $18 or whatever it is they cost. Then when the basses go dead, just throw them away and use D'Addario or something. They have a ton of different models of strings, so it's a lot to look at, but they do make good strings. There's another company called Augustine. I think Mr. Augustine actually invented the nylon string back in the 20s or 30s or something like that, and they still have a company that they run. Those strings are really interesting sounding to me. If you're familiar with the playing of Andres Segovia, he used Augustine strings, I guess exclusively. That's what their marketing says. So you can be reminded by some of the tones you get out of these strings. To me, they're a little bit more earthy. Like, they make very good sounds, but the basses and trebles alike are a little bit more. They're not quite as smooth as some other brands. And that might be exactly what you're looking for. I mean, you can still make smooth sounds, but there's something earthy about their sound, is how I describe it. But they make good strings. The red pack is medium tension, their blue pack is hard tension, and I have one guitar, it's a cedar guitar, but it's a little bit lighter braced, where medium tension Augustine trebles are perfect. Oh, except for the third string. Third string sounds like complete garbage. So I'm gonna, at least on this guitar it does. So I'm gonna swap that out. But strings 1 and 2, the second string is it's one of the best combinations I've ever come up with. This particular guitar with Augustine medium tension second string, it's like everything I can imagine coming out of a treble string. It just sounds perfect. And when you play it, the guitar just screams with happiness. It's so happy. First string is also really good. It's not quite there. Third string sounds like garbage. I don't know. So I'm gonna put a labella third string or something like that, but I haven't done it yet. But check out Augustine. And then I would just go on stringsbymail.com and look at classical guitar strings. There's a ton of brands. Try them out and see what you think. There's also some more choices these days with what your strings are made out of. They don't just come in nylon anymore. Now you see carbon strings or titanium strings. You'll just have to try these and see if you like them. Typically, I don't use strings like this. The titaniums to me actually sound pretty interesting, but it sounds less natural. They're so the attack is very clear, and they're pretty powerful, but they don't have much to offer in terms of sound control. They're not very sensitive. So a bright, chirpy sound sounds very nice, and then you reach for a deep lyrical sound, and it just doesn't change much. So that was a deal breaker for me. Maybe for a particular recording, they might work good. But you can try them out, see if you like them. Carbon strings, they have a very different sound to them. They're very bright. They have more sustain, without a doubt, than nylon strings. But the tone of voice, to me, it's sacrificed. You sacrifice tone of voice for volume, clarity of the attack, I guess, and sustain. But the tone of voice is not near as natural sounding to me as nylon. Again, I do have one guitar. Some guitars have carbon fiber in their bracing. So you probably wouldn't be surprised to know sometimes carbon strings sound very good on those guitars. But for a traditional guitar, it's not going to have carbon fiber in its bracing. I probably wouldn't recommend carbon, but you could try it. Or what some people do, and some companies sell string sets like this. It's like first string will be nylon, second string will be nylon, third string will be carbon. So you might have a guitar with a really dark sounding third string, and you put a carbon string just there to brighten it up. Or maybe like a first string or something like that to make it really bright and pop out a texture. So you can kind of think of it that way. And anything that's like nylon, carbon, composite, just think of it as carbon string. That's what you're getting. But you just have to try those out if you're interested. And some people love carbon strings. I don't really mean to dog on them. Some people use carbon strings exclusively. So you'll never know unless you try. Another brand, this is also kind of Labella, but they now make a Pepe Romero signature guitar string, and I really like those strings. If you don't know Pepe Romero, then go check him out immediately. He's one of the best guitar players that's ever lived, and he has one of my favorite guitar sounds ever. Just a guitar sound that's just better than I could ever imagine. And he says he's been working with Labella for years to develop these strings, and I believe him, because they're very special. The high tensions, they're pretty high. They're pretty hard strings, but the basses are like, they're going to be some of the biggest basses that you're going to find. Just so boomy, huge, and the trebles, they have enough to match the basses, but they also have this really nice kind of sweet quality to them. He says he was trying to get back some of the tone qualities out of gut strings. If you don't know this about guitar strings, before they used nylon, they used gut, like cat guts or other animals' leftover guts, like intestines. They would wash them and somehow make strings out of them. Apparently they were very inaccurate when it came to tuning, but a lot of people say they were superior in terms of the tone that they made. So Pepe, he's talked about trying to get some of these qualities of the gut string with the modern nylon string production, and I think they're very good strings. The only reason why I don't have them on my guitar right now is because the trebles started shredding on me. This happens to me with some strings and not with others. I don't understand. I don't know why. But sometimes the tops of the treble strings will just start to peel off a little bit. And it feels a little uncomfortable, but as soon as a chunk is big enough for you to like pull it off, your intonation is dead. It's shot. The string has been compromised, so at that point you just gotta change it. So I don't know if that's good, if that's across the board, or if it was just one set. I remember really liking them, but that's why I don't have them on my guitar right now. But the basses, they're a little bit more expensive than I like to, but I'll buy them and be like, ooh, I'm going to use these, for a concert or something. Like, I'm going to save them for a special occasion because they're really, really cool, really huge basses. Their medium tension set is also a really good set, and they make carbon strings too. You can probably make any set of strings sound good. I mean, hopefully. But strings are different for every human being that plays the guitar. So it all depends on how you touch the guitar specifically, and the aspects of that are unique. And combined with how sensitive your instrument is, what kind of wood it's made out of, the quality of that instrument. All these things work together to make your sound. So the only way to go about this is to just try a lot of different brands. What I do is kind of make a hobby out of it. Like, you want to see something that's embarrassing? Look at all these strings I got. Look, this is all strings. And like a lot of these are like full packs that haven't opened yet. Or like packs that's like I use 3 for some guitar, but I have 3 left for something else. Or I have like a random leftover 1 string. Or like these bags, like I said, where, you know, I've used the strings, but, you know, I take off the trebles, I'm going to save them for later. It's like a hobby. So I'm going to look through my string box and be like, you know, what do I want to try? What guitar am I going to look at, and what am I going to try? And then that's not enough to hold all my strings, so I actually have this box too. Full of strings, look at this. Oh, this is nuts. There's some batteries in here too. So make a hobby out of it, right? Your hobby is trying different strings out. You know, you could keep a journal if you wanted, or write this down on your phone or something. You know, use this set of strings on this guitar. Or here's what I thought it sounded like. I've certainly done that a lot. And then when you get a set that sounds the best ever, you just enjoy it for a while. Feed your guitar that setup. Feed it those sounds and enjoy it. But that's the only way to go about strings. Try something out. You'll learn something. Yes, I like it. I like it better. No, I don't like it. You know, this string for this guitar is not a good combination. Or, you know, like I've mentioned before, sometimes I like combinations just for a particular, you know, feel or sound. It might not be the most superior set. Maybe I want that spanky sound of the light bass strings, or maybe I want the really crispy, kind of sharp sound of the titanium trebles, you know, for a particular piece. You'll know that those options are there. But if you have a really good instrument, trying out strings is so much fun. Oh man, it's so much fun. It's kind of like a new instrument. Well, it is a new instrument. I mean, it really, really is. It really is. If you get a new set of strings and put it on your guitar and you never played them before, you have a new instrument. I mean, seriously. You have some relativity of like, okay, this guitar does this or does that, but you still are going to have new experiences in how it responds. So strings are just huge. I mean, you can't get too into them. They're so neat. Think of them as like colorful tools that you can use and like really match and mismatch and rearrange just as much as you can think. They now make a Pepe Romero